let's jump back in. So we said goals and planning and prayer, and now here's number 4, push. Goals and planning and prayer and push. So David starts out with a fantastic, it's a goal dream that God has given him. I don't mean literal dream. I mean this thing out there that God says, this is going to happen. He sends the prophet Samuel. And Samuel, I mean, it's like a whole kind of secret family thing. He finally gets to David and says, David, I don't know how to tell you this, man, but you are going to be the king of Israel. And that's a little problematic because there's already a king of Israel, and I don't know if he's going to like that. And David is just, he's a teenager, and he doesn't really know what to do with that, and he doesn't really do anything except he keeps living for God. That's his whole plan. I'm going to plan to live for God. And for some of us, as you think about the goal that's out ahead of you, maybe the best plan, the first plan at least, is, well, whatever I do, I'm just going to plan to live for God. I'm going to do my day-to-day life. I'm going to keep going to work. I'm going to keep going to school. I'm just going to live for God. That's what David did. That's how he started out. And as he did that, that's when he ran into his challenge that took a lot of courage. Let's jump forward 1,000 years. The Apostle Paul is in prison. He's scheduled to be executed. And he writes this very encouraging, very optimistic letter to his protege, Timothy, who tended to be a little bit timid. And he says, Timothy, here's what you got to remember, man. I get it because I'm about to go die here pretty soon, probably. 2 Timothy 1:7, for the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power and love and self-discipline. He says, Timothy, you weren't called to step back, you were called to step up. And you need the Spirit's power to take action, to take charge, to take whatever you need to take to keep moving forward, to push with love for others, to push by the Spirit's power, to have concern, selfless concern for others. Well, that's really what David spent most of his early life doing, was by the Spirit of God, taking ground, loving others, expressing concern for others. So one day, he just happens to show up. His father sends him on an errand, and there's this giant there, Goliath. You know about him. And Goliath is taunting the entire nation, including the king. He's like, you guys are puds. I will smoke any one of you. Bring it on. And people are just like, they're trembling. And David rolls up. Who is this mook? What's he doing? I'm going to come in there, and I'll tell you what, I don't like him talking about my God or my God's people. And so by the Spirit of God, David, he's full of faith. He's already fought the lion and the bear, protecting the little lambs, the little sheep that God had given him. And so he's like, here's what we're going to do. Just let me go. I'm going to go out there, and I'm going to shoot a sling in his head, and then or a stone in his head, and then I'm going to cut off his head, which is exactly what he did by faith. And it's a whole big scandal, man. It's a whole big to-do. That happens in 1 Samuel 18. And then, it's so dope. It's so awesome that spontaneously people write a song about him right there. And gals start singing it. They're like, hey, man, Saul, he's our king. He's slain his thousands, but David's slain his 10,000s. It was really only one guy. But they're like, he's so awesome. Everybody loves him. He did what even the king wouldn't do. There's a great big song about it. And so he's kind of famous. There's a celebration. And he's pushing through the fear, and now he's into a time of celebration. And sometimes on our way, as we're pushing, there's celebration times. There's times where you won. You did that. That was really good. That's a success. Fantastic. Well done. Way to go. But people are tested by the praise that is given them. Sometimes we can focus a little bit too long on everything we did right, and we're starting to miss what we could be doing right. And we're getting a little high on ourselves. We're getting to think that we're all that. And it's time to say, hey, man, great celebration, but I don't want to be tricked into thinking I'm better than I am. Because that's what can happen with pride, when you overthink about how great you are. When you overthink about how great you are, you pick a fight with somebody you can't win. When you overthink about how great you are, you swim into the deep end where you can't keep swimming. You do stuff that is foolish because you're overinflated in your sense of yourself. So David pushes through that, and he gets to this place of disappointment. The king is kind of like excited and jealous of David. And so he says, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you my daughter in marriage, David. Because you're so awesome, you can have my daughter. But then he messes with him and takes her back and gives it to another person. And David, at first, he's all humble. He's like, wow, who am I that I would be in the king's family? It's a princess. Oh, I guess that's not real anymore. Can you imagine how disappointed you might be? The whole journey is full of disappointments. And so this other daughter, Michal, she's in love with David, and so Saul says, I tell you what, I'm gonna tell him that he can marry her, but I'm gonna give him a challenge that might get him killed first because I kind of want him dead. See, King Saul's the mad king. Dude is crazy. And he's crazy with jealousy, and he's just pushing, trying to get this guy killed. Ultimately, he starts trying to murder the guy. Can you imagine like how that feels? You're people they sing songs about, and really you're delighted to be in the family. There's something about, when you join a family, you want everyone to like you, don't you? You want people to think you're at least worth, being around and loving and mentor. He's probably looking to the king for mentoring, like, oh man, this is gonna be great. And yet this dude is trying to kill him. There's a lot to push through. There's a lot of rejection. You have any rejection to push through? There's a lot of people dismissing you. You have any of that to push through? It happens all the time. Many of you know the story. 1996, a gal named J.K. Rowling is on welfare, and she's sending her manuscripts to different publishers. And we know what happens. Ultimately, eventually, one picks her up, and now she's one of the most successful authors in the history of the world. But there were real days when she wasn't that. She was she'd received the rejection again. Oh my gosh. What am I doing? Am I stupid? Like, does everyone else get it that I'm a moron and I shouldn't be doing this? Have you ever felt like that? But she pushed through, and there's a lot that God will call us to push through. So, let me just ask you, whatever you're gonna do this year or the next 5 years, there's stuff you gotta push through? What do you gotta push through? Because we all get it. We all get something to push through. We're talking next weekend about the 15-year vision. And I don't know everything about the next 15 years, but I can tell you this, whatever we do, it's not just gonna happen. It's gonna require a lot of push. If we're gonna seek to be an impact on the coming generation that is losing its grip on truth and impart spiritual wisdom and courage and passion, that's not gonna come easy, man. That's gonna require some fierce people that are ready to fight and ready to push. And some folks that are ready to, check it out, here's our bottom line, ready to grow into it. I don't know that we like that idea, grow into it. But it's a real thing. You ever notice that dogs don't just have dogs, they have puppies? It doesn't come out a dog. The puppy has to grow into it, right? You didn't come out a full human, like fully ready. You came out a human that had to grow into all the things that you can do now. No one's just like, I'm gonna be good at music, and then they are. No, if you've got a goal, you wanna grow in your musical power this year, you're gonna have to grow into it. Nobody just has, dude, listen, nobody just has an incredible marriage. Can I get an amen from the people who've been married a long time? You don't just have it, you have to grow into it. It's something that takes time and work. And so David, what he's doing, we're gonna see him, he doesn't know it yet, but he's growing into it. Right now, in our story, he's panicking. He's like, what is going on? He's telling his friend Jonathan, you gotta save me, man. Your dad, your old man, he's trying to kill me. And at first, Jonathan resists it, and then he's like, no, yeah, he is trying to kill you, man. Yeah, that's real. And David goes on the run, and he's panicking. He's really, it's strange. He's not doing what he did at first. See, at first, he was just a young kid, full of faith. I'll kill that stupid giant. But now there's relational tension. Now there's attachments. Now it's like, I'm not walking in the same faith that I once was. Now he starts scheming. He starts lying. He starts doing all kinds of stuff that it's like, David, what are you doing, man? Why do you feel like you need to do this? Well, the king is sending assassins into his bedroom. He barely escapes through the help of his wife. And then he goes to see a priest. He's like, maybe I need to get out of town. I'll tell the priest some lies so that he'll think I'm sent on a mission from the king. He picks up the very sort of Goliath, the guy that he killed. But he lies to this priest. And honestly, this lie ends up getting like 85 people killed because of the lie that David tells. And then he moves on to, he says, hey man, the enemy of my enemy might be my friend, so maybe I can go be a mercenary for the Philistines, the guys that were taunting us with Goliath. So here, let's pick it up, 1 Samuel 21, verse 10. So David left, fleeing from Saul, and he went to King Achish of Gath. The king's officials said to Achish, isn't this David, the king of his country? This is the man about whom the women sang as they danced. Saul has killed his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. Now, they weren't totally right. He wasn't the king yet, but he just has that way about him maybe. Maybe they look at him, and David didn't expect this. They don't know that he was on TMZ that morning, but people they're starting to recognize him. And they're like, what is this guy doing here? He was hoping that he'd just be another guy showing up for maybe some mercenary service, but nope. Their words made a deep impression on David, and he became very much afraid of King Achish. So whenever they were around, David, listen to this, he pretended to be insane and acted like a madman when they tried to restrain him. He would scribble on the city gates and dribble down his beard. So Achish said to his officials, look, this man is mad. Why do you bring him to me? Haven't I got enough madmen already? Why bring another one to annoy me with his daft actions right in my own house? So in some ways, you could say it worked. He's not in danger. He's proven, yeah, I'm not a threat. I'm a maniac. And at the same time, this is a very undignified moment. David, what are you doing? Weren't you the guy that told Goliath in front of everybody, I'm going to come out there and I'm going to cut your head off? Isn't that you? In front of the entire Philistine army? Why are you doing this now? Why are you reverting? Why are you going into these places that it's like, that's not character becoming of the king? What's interesting is during this very time, Psalm 34 and Psalm 52 are songs that David pens during this time. And as you read those Psalms, you see, wow, his heart is really connected to the Lord. Like he really is fearful. He's really crying out, I'm in danger. I need God's help. You get the sense that he has a relationship with God that is very real. And yet he's behaving in ways that seem to demonstrate, are you sure you and God are on the same page about this kind of thing? And yet, aren't you so glad that God doesn't wait till you're all grown up to be close to you? I'll say that again. Aren't you so glad that God doesn't wait until you're all grown up before he'll be close to you? Man, I remember some of the stupid stuff I used to do. Some of the stupid stuff I would even say thinking I was saying it for Jesus. But he was still close to me. He would still draw me near. He'd still speak to me through his word. He's like, man, this poor guy. But I see the end from the beginning, and I know eventually I'm going to help him grow up. And the truth is, guys, we all act like madmen sometimes. We're all that way. We all do something less than we should. We all behave in, sure, we have our famous moments like David did, but then we have our most undignified moments. And do you know that God is with us in both of them? Jesus looks and he sees the good. He says, yeah, I know, but I see what she's going to become. I see what this is going to do for her. I see the future when she regrets this and makes wiser decisions, and she kind of reprograms herself and becomes the queen or the king that she was supposed to be. Aren't you glad that God sees it and God is still with us? What I'm doing right now is really what my wife and I set out to do when we were 21. Like it was some version of this. This is what we wanted. Wanted to be leading a church, wanted to be preaching God's word all the time. This is what we want to do. I got to tell you what, man, it was a way less direct route to this than I thought at 21. Sometimes we just think everything's going to be up and to the right. It's all linear, man. It's just like, yep, zip, there I go. But how many know it's really not like that at all? It's like 3 steps forward, 1 step back, you fall down into a pit, you start to cry, you get up, you climb a ladder and fall off that. Then you go back a mile, and then you maybe scoot forward 2 inches, and then slowly you're like, Jesus is just like dragging you the whole way, and you're getting there, but baby, it don't feel good, and it's definitely not a straight journey. We started, and at first, there was a leadership failure in the church that I was pastoring as a very too young man, and so that hit us, and then we're out of real ministry for 7 years. I was sick, and all these up and down disappointments, and then finally, as I'm finishing up school, I'm finally just a little door opens for me to do some kind of a ministry, and years are going by, and I'm like, God, I feel like I'm getting too old. I'm not going to be able to do anything. And he's quiet, just trust me, just keep going, just keep walking. And then, finally, we get to do some real ministry, and then there's disappointments, and then, check this out, there's theories that were just wrong. There's theories we have that we make mistakes with, and we're like, oh, that was dumb. Now I have to go undo the very thing that I thought was so smart when I was younger. And then we keep going. And finally, we get to plant a church in 2009. And yet that's filled with, it is filled with a lot of fun. It's also filled with a lot of frustration because no one knows how to do anything. You can't tell anybody to do anything because nobody works for you. And so everyone's just trying to hammer this thing together. And then there's betrayals. And then there's people that you bleed for, and they come up and kick you in the shins and slap you and walk away. Not literally, but that's what it feels like. All the way, God is bringing us, and the test I didn't see that was there was, hey man, can you grow into it? You don't have to be there right now. Can you grow into the character of the man you want to be someday? Can you do that now? Can you get that in your spirit as something that needs to happen? Can you grow into it? So, can I ask you, can you grow into it? Can you grow into this year? Maybe it's not just the goal, maybe it's the healthy boundaries that it's time to grow into. Maybe it's you've got these really cool dreams and they really are cool and they really are God, but there's a consistency that you lack that makes everybody question your integrity. Maybe it's this year that you want to start to grow into that, to grow into my word is yes, not yes, no, maybe. It's whatever I say is going to happen. That's really what I'm going to attempt to do. Is there a space in your marriage? You're thinking you got a dud. You're like, I just got the wrong marriage, man. That's all it was. And it's really not that at all. It's just that the Lord you thought it was supposed to be, ever after the movie, right there on day one. And it's really, no, you have to grow into this again and again and again. Can you grow into it? Can you just decide? How many think we should grow into it? I think that we should.